James had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. 3 long years of saving every extra dollar, skipping lunches, taking on weekend projects, and saying no to things he wanted, just so he could say yes to this one thing. As he walked through the airport terminal that Tuesday morning, the first-class ticket felt like a small piece of paper that held something much bigger. It held proof that hard work pays off. It held a promise he'd made to himself. He wasn't flying first class to show off. Nobody he knew would even see him up there. He was doing it because he wanted to know what it felt like just once, to not worry about legroom or fighting for the armrest or having someone recline their seat into his knees. At 42 years old, after building his career from nothing, he figured he'd earned it. The gate attendant smiled when she scanned his boarding pass. "First class today, sir. You can board whenever you're ready." James nodded, trying to play it cool, but inside he felt like a kid on Christmas morning. He'd watched YouTube videos about first-class travel, read articles, even asked his coworker who flew business class sometimes what to expect. He wanted to be prepared, to not look like he didn't belong there. When he stepped onto the plane, everything felt different. The flight attendant greeted him by name. The seats looked like they belonged in someone's living room, not on an airplane. There was actual space between the rows. He found his seat 2A right by the window and sank into the leather like it was giving him a hug. He pulled out his phone and took a quick photo of the seat, sending it to his wife back home in Atlanta. "Made it," he typed. "This is unreal." Her response came back immediately. "You deserve it, baby. Enjoy every second." James smiled. His wife knew what this meant to him. She'd been there during the lean years when they'd lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with their newborn daughter, when they'd had to choose between paying the electricity bill on time or buying groceries for the week. She'd watched him work 70-hour weeks to learn coding on his own, to switch careers, to build something better for their family. This ticket to Los Angeles wasn't just about comfort. It was about proving to himself that he'd made it out of that struggle, that he was doing okay now. As he settled in, the flight attendant came by with a tray of drinks. "Can I get you anything before we take off? Champagne? Orange juice?" "Water's fine, thank you," James said, still feeling slightly out of place. He'd never been someone who drank champagne at 9 in the morning, even if it was free. He gazed out the window at the planes taxiing on the runway, thinking about why he was making this trip. His mother's 70th birthday was coming up, and for the first time in his life, he could actually afford to fly out and surprise her. She lived in a small apartment in Los Angeles, the same neighborhood where she'd raised him and his 2 sisters, the same neighborhood where she'd worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. She didn't know he was coming. He'd told her he couldn't make it this year, that work was too busy. The look he imagined on her face when she opened the door and saw him standing there made him smile even wider than the first-class seat did. People started filing onto the plane, and James watched them pass by the first-class cabin, most of them glancing at the fancy seats with the same hunger he'd felt for years. He got it. He'd been them for so long. Part of him still felt like an imposter sitting up here. That's when he noticed movement in the economy section. Through the gap in the curtain that separated first class from the rest of the plane, he could see people struggling to find space for their bags, squeezing past each other in the narrow aisle. It was like watching a completely different travel experience happening 50 feet away. And then he saw her, a young woman, very pregnant, trying to navigate down that cramped aisle with a carry-on bag that kept bumping into seats. She looked exhausted before she'd even sat down. Her face was pale and she kept one hand pressed to her lower back as she walked. James felt something twist in his chest. His wife had been 8 months pregnant when they'd flown to her sister's wedding 3 years ago. He remembered how miserable she'd been, even though they'd paid extra for an aisle seat with slightly more legroom. She'd spent the entire flight shifting positions, trying to get comfortable, fighting back tears from the pain in her hips. The pregnant woman finally reached her seat. James watched as she tried to squeeze into a middle seat between 2 other passengers. The man by the window didn't even look up from his phone. The woman in the aisle seat sighed loudly, annoyed at having to stand up to let her pass. James saw her struggle with the seatbelt, trying to make it fit around her belly. Even from where he sat, he could see her hands shaking. She looked like she might cry. He turned back to his own spacious seat, the one he'd worked so hard for, the one he'd saved for, the one he'd been looking forward to for months. He ran his hand over the leather armrest, felt the generous legroom stretching out in front of him. Then he looked back at that curtain, imagining that woman trying to survive a flight in that tiny space while carrying a whole other human being inside her. His mother's voice echoed in his head. It was something she'd told him countless times growing up, whenever he'd wanted to keep something for himself instead of sharing with his sisters. "Baby," she'd say, "having more than someone else means you got a choice. You can hold on to it tight or you can remember what it felt like when you had nothing." James closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He knew what he was about to do was probably crazy. His wife might think he'd lost his mind. This was supposed to be his moment, his reward, his proof that he'd made something of himself. But sitting up here in luxury while watching that pregnant woman suffer 50 feet away didn't feel like success. It felt wrong. He pressed the call button above his seat. A flight attendant appeared almost immediately, still smiling that professional first-class smile. "Yes, sir? What can I get for you?" James hesitated for just a second, giving himself one last chance to change his mind. Then he spoke. "That pregnant lady back in economy," he said, gesturing toward the curtain. "Would it be possible for her to take this seat instead of me?" The flight attendant's smile faltered. She looked confused, like she'd misheard him. "I'm sorry, sir. Could you repeat that?" "I'd like to give her my seat," James said more firmly. "The pregnant woman back there. She needs it more than I do." The flight attendant stared at him like he'd just spoken a foreign language. In her 10 years of working flights, she'd seen a lot of things, but this was new. "Sir, you paid for first class. We can't refund the difference if you switch." "I know," James said. "I'm not asking for money back. I just want her to be comfortable." The flight attendant opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "Are you absolutely sure?" James looked one more time at his beautiful first-class seat. His reward, his prize, his proof. Then he thought about that woman's shaking hands and remembered his own wife crying in pain on a plane 3 years ago. "Yeah," he said, standing up and grabbing his backpack. "I'm sure. Some things are just more important." The flight attendant stood there for a moment, just staring at James like she was waiting for him to say he was joking. When he didn't, she nodded slowly and walked toward the back of the plane, glancing over her shoulder twice as if she still couldn't believe what was happening. James gathered his things from the overhead compartment. His backpack, his neck pillow that his wife had insisted he bring, and the book he'd downloaded on his tablet about building better software teams. He'd planned to read it while sipping on fancy coffee and stretching his legs. Now he'd be reading it crammed between two strangers in a middle seat. A small voice in his head asked him if he was being stupid. That voice sounded a lot like his college roommate, who used to tell him he was too nice for his own good. "The world's gonna eat you alive," his roommate would say. "You gotta look out for yourself first." But a louder voice, one that sounded like his mother, reminded him of something different. She'd worked as a housekeeper for 20 years, cleaning rich people's homes. She'd come home with stories about the families she worked for. Some treated her like she was invisible. Others learned her name, asked about her kids, left her extra food from their dinner parties. The ones with the most money weren't always the kindest, she'd told him once. But the kind ones, baby, they were the richest in ways that actually mattered. Through the curtain, James could hear the flight attendant's voice, soft and gentle. "Excuse me, miss. I know this is unusual, but there's a gentleman in first class who'd like to offer you his seat." There was silence. Then a small, confused voice. "I'm sorry, what?" "The man in seat 2A saw that you were pregnant and uncomfortable. He wants you to take his first-class seat." "Is this some kind of joke?" The pregnant woman's voice cracked a little. "I don't understand." James moved toward the curtain, poking his head through. The woman was looking up at the flight attendant with wide eyes, her hand protectively over her belly. Up close, he could see how young she was, probably not even 30. She had dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. "No joke," James said with a smile. "I'm serious. You should take it." The woman looked at him, then at the flight attendant, then back at him. "But why? You don't even know me." "I don't need to know you to see you're uncomfortable," James said. "My wife was pregnant a few years back. Flying was rough on her. That seat up there has a lot more room. You'll be better off." Tears started forming in the woman's eyes. "I can't. This is too much. You paid for that seat, and now I'm choosing to give it to someone who needs it more." James kept his voice gentle but firm. "Please, it would make me feel good knowing you're comfortable up there. The man by the window finally looked up from his phone, watching the scene with raised eyebrows. The woman in the aisle seat had stopped sighing and was now watching too, along with several other passengers nearby. The pregnant woman wiped her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just grab your stuff and go be comfortable. That's all I want." She stood up slowly, wincing as she did. The flight attendant helped her with her bag. As she passed James in the narrow aisle, she stopped and looked directly at him. She was crying now, not even trying to hide it. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what this means." "Go on," James said, feeling his own throat get tight. "Enjoy it." He watched her walk toward first class, the flight attendant guiding her carefully. Then he looked at the middle seat she'd just left. It looked even smaller than he'd imagined. The man by the window had already spread out, his elbow taking up most of the shared armrest. The woman on the aisle had her purse stuffed under the seat, leaving even less legroom. James squeezed himself in, trying to arrange his 6'2" frame into a space designed for someone much smaller. His knees immediately hit the seat in front of him. He shifted, trying to find a position that didn't hurt. There wasn't one. The man by the window glanced at him. "You really gave up first class for her?" "Yeah, why?" James shrugged. "Seemed like the right thing to do." The man shook his head and went back to his phone, mumbling something James couldn't quite hear but was pretty sure wasn't complimentary. The woman on the aisle was different. She leaned over slightly. "That was really kind of you. My daughter's pregnant right now, due in 6 weeks. I know how hard it is for her just to walk to the mailbox. I can't imagine her on a plane like this. How's she doing?" James asked, grateful for the friendly voice. "Tired, swollen, emotional?" The woman smiled, but excited. "It's her first and mine too. Well, we just have one. She's 3 now. Best age," the woman said. "They're little people with big personalities." They chatted for a few minutes about kids and parenthood, and James felt himself relax a little. At least he wasn't stuck next to someone who'd make the flight miserable. Up in first class, the flight attendant was helping the pregnant woman settle in. Her name was Rachel, and she was flying to Los Angeles because her father had a heart attack 2 days ago. She'd booked the first flight she could find, not even thinking about the cost or the comfort, just desperate to get there. She'd been teaching 2nd grade for 5 years, and every penny of her modest salary went toward rent, bills, and now preparing for the baby. First class was something she'd seen in movies, not something she ever thought she'd experience in real life. As she sank into the leather seat, a sob escaped her throat. The flight attendant, whose name tag read Patricia, handed her tissues. "That man who gave you his seat," Patricia said quietly. "He seems really special." "I don't even know his name," Rachel said, wiping her eyes. "Would you like me to find out?" Rachel nodded. "I need to thank him properly. This is the kindest thing a stranger has ever done for me." Patricia smiled. "I've been flying for 15 years and I've never seen anything like this. Let me see what I can find out about him." Back in economy, James was trying to ignore the ache in his knees when a little girl in the row behind him poked her head between the seats. "Mister, are you famous?" James laughed. "No, sweetheart." "Why would you think that?" "My dad said only famous people sit in first class. And you were up there, but now you're back here. So maybe you're famous but hiding." Her mother pulled her back gently. "Lily, leave the man alone." Then to James, "Sorry about that. She's 7 and has no filter." "It's fine," James said, turning around to see them better. "I'm not famous. Just a regular guy." "Who gives up first-class seats?" the mother added with a knowing smile. "That's not so regular." Word was spreading through the cabin. James could hear whispers, could feel people looking at him. It made him uncomfortable. He hadn't done it for attention. He'd done it because it felt right in the moment, and now he was wondering if he'd made a huge mistake. His back was already starting to hurt. His knees were jammed against the seat. He had 4 hours of this ahead of him, 4 hours of being folded up like a paper crane in a space too small for his body. Patricia appeared beside his row, holding a small package. "Sir, I know you gave up your seat, but I wanted to bring you these. Extra snacks, a blanket, and I've upgraded your meal to the first-class option. It's the least we can do." "You don't have to do that," James said. "I know, but I want to." Patricia's eyes were kind. "What you did up there, it reminded me why I love this job. Most days I see people at their worst, fighting over overhead space, complaining about everything, treating us like servants. But then someone like you comes along and reminds me that good people still exist. James felt his face get warm. I just gave her a seat. You gave her more than that, Patricia said. You gave her hope that kindness still exists in the world, especially now when she's worried about her father and stressed about the baby. You showed her that strangers can still care about each other. After Patricia walked away, the woman in the aisle seat leaned toward James again. She's right, you know. What you did was special. Don't brush it off. James nodded but didn't say anything. He wasn't good at accepting compliments. He never had been. He pulled out his tablet and opened his book, trying to focus on the words. But his mind kept drifting to the woman in his seat up in first class. He hoped she was okay. He hoped her father would be okay. He hoped the baby would be healthy. And somewhere in the back of his mind, that small voice that sounded like his college roommate finally went quiet. Because maybe, just maybe, being too nice wasn't such a bad thing after all. Maybe his mother had been right all along. Rachel couldn't stop crying. The tears just kept coming no matter how many times she wiped them away. She'd been holding it together for 2 days straight, ever since she got the call about her father. She'd held it together while booking the flight, packing her bag, driving to the airport, and dragging herself through security. But now, sitting in this impossibly comfortable seat, surrounded by kindness she didn't expect and definitely didn't deserve, everything just broke open. Patricia brought her a hot towel and more tissues. Can I get you anything else, honey? Some water? Ginger ale? We have these really nice cookies. I'm okay, Rachel managed to say. I'm just overwhelmed. Good overwhelmed, if that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. Patricia sat down in the empty seat next to her for a moment. Sometimes kindness hits harder than cruelty. We're not always prepared for it. Rachel nodded, placing both hands on her belly. The baby kicked like she knew her mom was upset. I need to know his name. The man who did this, I need to properly thank him. I'll find out for you, Patricia promised. But first, let me get you settled. Have you eaten today? Rachel shook her head. She'd been too anxious to eat, too worried about her father lying in a hospital bed 3 states away. Thought so. Let me bring you something. Patricia stood and headed toward the galley, leaving Rachel alone with her thoughts. She pulled out her phone, her hands still shaking. She needed to tell someone what had just happened. She pulled up her sister's number and started typing. You won't believe what just happened on this plane. A stranger gave me his first-class seat. Just like that. Didn't know me. Didn't want anything. Just saw I was pregnant and uncomfortable and gave up his seat. I'm literally crying right now. Her sister's response came back almost immediately. Are you serious? That's incredible. Did you get his name? Not yet. The flight attendant is finding out. Sis, I can't stop thinking about how rare this is. How rare he is. Most people wouldn't do that. Most people would just look away. Rachel stared at that message for a long moment. Her sister was right. Most people did look away. She'd spent enough time in the world to know that much. What her sister didn't know, what nobody on this plane knew, was who Rachel really was. She wasn't just a second-grade teacher from Nashville. Well, she was that. But she was also the daughter of Robert Chen, one of the wealthiest real estate developers in the Southeast. Her father owned half the commercial buildings in 3 major cities. Her family name opened doors most people didn't even know existed. But Rachel had made a choice 5 years ago. After graduating college, instead of joining the family business like her older brother did, she'd moved to Nashville, found a small apartment, and started teaching. She used her mother's maiden name, Roberts, instead of Chen. She shopped at Target instead of boutiques. She drove a 10-year-old Honda instead of the Mercedes her father offered to buy her. Her parents thought she was crazy. Her brother called it her poverty phase and kept waiting for her to come to her senses. But Rachel had grown up watching people treat her family differently once they knew who they were. Friends who suddenly wanted favors. Boyfriends who were more interested in the family fortune than in her. People who smiled to her face but talked behind her back. She was tired of never knowing who was real and who was performing. So she'd built a different life, a simpler one, where people knew her for who she was, not what her last name could do for them. And now this man on the plane, this stranger, had done something extraordinary without having any idea who she was or what she could do for him in return. He'd seen a pregnant woman who needed help, and he'd helped. That was it, pure and simple. Patricia returned with a tray of food. Fresh fruit, a warm sandwich, and some kind of fancy soup that smelled amazing. Here you go, sweetie. Please eat something. You need your strength. Rachel picked at the fruit, her appetite slowly returning. Between bites, she asked, "Did you find out his name?" "I did. His name is James Wilson. He's a software engineer from Atlanta, flying to Los Angeles to visit his mother for her birthday. He gave up his birthday trip seat," Rachel said quietly. "This was probably special to him." Patricia nodded. "He told me earlier it was his first time flying first class. He'd been saving up for it." Rachel felt her throat tighten again. His first time. He'd probably been looking forward to this for months, maybe years. And he'd just handed it away like it was nothing. "I need to do something for him," Rachel said. "I can't just let this go." "I'm sure he'd say your gratitude is enough. It's not." Rachel pulled out her phone again. "It's really not." She opened her email and started typing. Her father was in the hospital, but her mother would see this message. So would her brother. So would David Kim, the family lawyer who'd been handling their affairs for 20 years. She explained what happened on the plane. She described James, his sacrifice, his kindness, and then she asked them to do some research. Find out everything they could about James Wilson, software engineer from Atlanta, not to invade his privacy but to understand his life, to see if there was a way they could thank him properly. Her brother's response came back first. "You want us to investigate some random guy on a plane?"
"Rachel, this is weird even for you. Just do it, please."
"And tell Mom I'm almost there." "How's Dad?" "Stable. Still in ICU, but the doctors are optimistic." Mom's barely left his side. Rachel felt relief wash over her. Stable was good. Stable meant her father would get to meet his grandchild. She sent a prayer of thanks up to whatever was listening. Back in economy, James was trying to read his book, but the little girl behind him kept asking questions. Her name was Lily, and she'd decided James was the most interesting person on the plane. "Why did you give away your seat?" "Because the lady needed it more than me." "But weren't you sad?" "First class looks really nice." "A little sad," James admitted. "But sometimes doing the right thing makes you feel better than doing the comfortable thing." Lily thought about this. "My mom says I should always share my toys. Is it like that?" "Exactly like that," James said, smiling. Lily's mother looked embarrassed. "Lily, please stop bothering him." "She's not bothering me," James said. And he meant it. Talking to Lily was actually helping him forget about his cramped legs and aching back. The man by the window had put his phone away and was now listening to their conversation. After Lily finally settled down to watch a movie, the man spoke. "I judged you earlier. Thought you were showing off or something. I was wrong." James looked at him surprised. "It's okay. No, it's not. I've become that guy who assumes the worst about people. My ex-wife used to call me out on it all the time, said I'd gotten cynical." He extended his hand. "I'm Frank." "James." They shook hands awkwardly across the middle seat. "What you did up there," Frank said. "It reminded me of something my grandfather used to say. He'd say, Frank, the measure of a man isn't what he does when people are watching. It's what he does when it costs him something. Your grandfather sounds like he was a wise man. He was. I should listen to his advice more often." Frank settled back in his seat. "I work in finance. Spend my days watching people step on each other to get ahead. It's easy to forget that guys like you exist." James didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Up in first class, Rachel had finished eating and was feeling better physically, though her mind was racing. She kept thinking about James sitting in that cramped seat, probably uncomfortable, probably regretting his decision at least a little bit. She thought about all the people she'd known in her life. The wealthy friends of her family who threw $1,000 dinners but never tipped the staff properly. The businessmen who donated millions to charity for the tax write-offs and the publicity, not because they actually cared. The socialites who performed kindness when cameras were around but ignored homeless people on the street. And then there was this man, James, who'd given up something he'd worked hard for, something that mattered to him, for a complete stranger. No cameras. No audience. No reward expected. Patricia stopped by again. "How are you feeling now?" "Better, thank you." Rachel paused. "Can I ask you something? In all your years flying, how often does something like this happen?" Patricia thought for a moment. "I've seen people give up their seats a handful of times, usually for elderly passengers or families with small kids. But giving up first class? This is the first time. And the way he did it so quietly, not making a big deal about it, that's even rarer. That's what I thought. Rachel looked out the window at the clouds below. He doesn't know it yet, but he just changed his whole life. What do you mean? Patricia asked. Rachel smiled but didn't answer. She couldn't explain, not yet. But she'd made a decision somewhere between the fruit and the soup. She was going to make sure James knew that his kindness hadn't gone unnoticed, that it mattered. That he mattered. Her phone buzzed. A message from David, the family lawyer. I found him. James Wilson, 42, software engineer at TechCore Solutions in Atlanta. Married, one daughter aged 3. Clean record. By all accounts, a good man. Want me to dig deeper? Rachel typed back quickly. Yes, everything, but keep it respectful. I don't want to invade his privacy. I just want to know how we can help him. She sat back in the comfortable seat, her hand on her belly, and smiled. James Wilson had no idea what was coming his way. 2 hours into the flight, James's legs had gone from uncomfortable to actually painful. He'd tried shifting positions at least 30 times, but there was no winning combination in a middle seat when you were over 6 feet tall. Every time he moved, he'd bump into Frank on one side or the nice woman named Helen on the other. I'm sorry, he kept saying. I can't seem to get comfortable. Stop apologizing, Helen said kindly. You gave up a perfectly good seat. The least we can do is deal with a few bumps. Frank nodded in agreement. She's right. Besides, I'm the one who should apologize. I've been hogging the armrest. We can share it, James offered. They worked out a system where they'd alternate who got the armrest every 30 minutes. It was silly maybe, but it helped pass the time. And somehow, in the cramped quarters of row 23, James found himself having one of the more interesting conversations he'd had in months. Frank, it turned out, was going through a divorce. His wife had left him 6 months ago, and he was flying to Los Angeles to sign the final papers. 22 years of marriage, Frank said, staring at his hands. Gone. And the worst part is I can't even say I'm surprised. I saw it coming for years. I just didn't do anything to stop it. I'm sorry, man, James said. That's rough. You married? Frank asked. Yeah, 10 years next month. Any advice? I mean, clearly you're doing something right. James thought about it. I don't know if I'm doing anything special. But my wife and I, we talk. About everything. The boring stuff, the hard stuff, the scary stuff. We don't let things build up. We stopped talking, Frank admitted. I'd come home from work and we'd just exist in the same house. 2 strangers who happened to share an address. Helen leaned in from the other side. I lost my husband 3 years ago. Cancer. And I'd give anything for one more conversation with him. Even a boring one about what to have for dinner. The 3 of them sat in silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Life's short, Helen continued. And the older I get, the more I realize that the moments that matter aren't the big ones. It's the little Tuesday afternoon when nothing special is happening, but you're together and you're talking and you're present with each other. Is that why you're flying to LA? James asked her. My grandson's birthday. He's turning 5. I could have sent a card and a check, but I thought, why not show up? Why not be there? He won't remember what I gave him, but he'll remember that I came. James smiled. That's exactly why I'm going. My mom's turning 70 and I want to be there to see her face when she realizes I showed up. She doesn't know you're coming? Frank asked. Nope. Told her I was too busy with work. She's gonna lose it when she sees me. That's beautiful, Helen said. Your mother raised you right. I can tell, she did her best. Wasn't easy. She raised 3 kids on her own, working multiple jobs. But she always made time for us, you know? She'd come home exhausted, but she'd still help us with homework, make us dinner, tuck us in. Sounds like a remarkable woman, Frank said. She is. That's actually why I booked the first-class ticket in the first place. I wanted to feel like I'd made it, you know? Like all her sacrifices paid off. I wanted to sit in that fancy seat and think, look, Mom, I did okay. Helen reached over and patted his arm. Honey, you did more than okay. What you did today proved that. You could have sat up there feeling successful and comfortable, but instead you chose to help someone. That's the kind of success your mama was raising you toward. Not the money kind. The character kind. James felt his eyes getting wet. He blinked quickly, trying to hide it. Up in first class, Patricia had been checking on Rachel every 20 minutes. Each time she'd find her either on her phone, typing furiously, or staring out the window with a thoughtful expression. You doing all right? Patricia asked during one of her check-ins. I've been thinking about something, Rachel said. Can I ask you about James? What was he like when he checked in? When he first sat down? Patricia smiled, remembering. He was like a kid on Christmas morning, trying to play it cool, but you could see how excited he was. He took a picture of the seat to send to someone. His wife, I think. He was that excited about it. Oh yes, this was clearly a big deal for him. That's what made it even more remarkable when he gave it up. He didn't just give up a seat. He gave up an experience he'd been looking forward to. Rachel felt that familiar tightness in her throat again. I need to do something for him, Patricia. Something meaningful. I think just telling him what his kindness meant to you would be enough. But it's not enough for me, Rachel said. I need him to understand that good people don't go unnoticed. That kindness matters, that it counts for something. Patricia studied her for a moment. You seem like you're working something out in your head. I am. Rachel looked down at her phone at the messages from her brother and David, the family lawyer. They'd sent her a full report on James. Not in a creepy way, just public information. His work history, his education, his social media presence, which was minimal, and mostly pictures of his daughter. One thing stood out from the report. James had been applying to jobs at nonprofits, tech companies that focused on education, on helping underprivileged kids learn to code. He'd sent out dozens of applications over the past year, but nothing had come through. He was clearly looking for work that meant something more than just a paycheck. Rachel's family foundation had been searching for someone to run their new STEM education initiative. They needed someone with a tech background who genuinely cared about helping kids. Someone who understood what it was like to grow up without resources. Someone exactly like James. She typed a message to David. I want to offer him the director position for the STEM program, but I need to do this right. I don't want him to feel like it's charity or pity. How do I approach this? David's response came back quickly. Let me draft something. But Rachel, you're sure about this? You're making a major hiring decision based on one act of kindness. I'm not making it based on one act. I'm making it based on what that act revealed about his character. We can always find people with the right skills. Finding people with the right heart is harder. Back in economy, the plane hit a patch of turbulence. The seatbelt sign came on and everyone grabbed their armrests. Lily, the little girl behind James, let out a small scream. It's okay, sweetie, her mother said. Just some bumps, but Lily was crying now, scared. James turned around in his seat as much as he could. Hey, Lily, you know what I do when the plane gets bumpy? She looked at him with tear-filled eyes. What? I pretend I'm on a roller coaster. Have you ever been on a roller coaster? She nodded. Well, this is just like that, except safer and not as fun. But if you close your eyes and pretend really hard, you can almost hear people screaming like they do at an amusement park. Lily closed her eyes, concentrating. When the plane bounced again, James made an exaggerated whee sound. Despite herself, Lily giggled. See? Just a boring roller coaster. You're really good with kids, Helen observed. I'm guessing you have some of your own. One daughter. She's 3. Her name's Zoe, and she's the best thing that ever happened to me and my wife. I can tell. You've got that dad energy. The turbulence passed, but James stayed turned around, talking to Lily and her mom until the little girl had completely forgotten to be scared. When he finally settled back into his seat, Frank shook his head in amazement. You just can't help yourself, can you? You see someone who needs help and you just automatically do something about it. James shrugged. It's not that deep. I just don't like seeing kids scared. It is that deep, though, Frank said. Most people would have put in headphones and ignored her. You turned around and made her feel better. Just like you gave up your seat for that pregnant woman. Just like you've been patient with me and Helen taking up your space and talking your ear off. You're just a decent guy, and that's rarer than you think. James didn't know what to say to that. He'd never thought of himself as particularly special. He was just doing what his mother had taught him, what felt right. Patricia appeared at their row, bending down to speak quietly to James. The woman in your seat would like to speak with you before we land. Would that be okay? Of course, James said. Is she all right? She's fine. She just wants to thank you properly. She doesn't need to do that, Patricia smiled. I know, but she wants to. Trust me, you'll want to hear what she has to say. After Patricia walked away, Helen nudged James. Sounds like you made quite an impression. I just gave her a seat. You keep saying that, Frank said, like it's nothing. But I've been watching people on this plane. And every single person who knows what you did is looking at you differently. You've reminded everyone here that good people still exist. In a world where the news is always terrible and everyone seems out for themselves, you've given people hope. That's not nothing, James. James looked around the cabin. Sure enough, several people were glancing his way. Some smiled. Some nodded. One older man gave him a thumbs up. He'd never wanted attention. He just wanted to help someone who needed it. But maybe, he thought, maybe letting people see kindness wasn't such a bad thing. Maybe it reminded them to be kind too. Maybe that's how it spread, one small act at a time. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our descent into Los Angeles. We should be on the ground in about 20 minutes. Flight attendants, prepare for landing. James felt his stomach flip, and it wasn't from the descent. He was about to meet the woman he'd given his seat to, and for some reason he was nervous. What would he even say? You're welcome seemed too casual. It was nothing. Felt like he was dismissing her gratitude. Helen must have noticed his fidgeting. Relax, just be yourself. That's been working pretty well for you so far. Frank leaned over. Whatever happens, man, I just want to say meeting you made this whole miserable trip worth it. You reminded me of the kind of person I want to be. You're already that person, James said. You just forgot for a little while. Your ex-wife's lost, by the way. Frank laughed, a real genuine laugh. Thanks for that. The plane touched down smoothly and everyone started gathering their things. James pulled his backpack from under the seat in front of him, his whole body aching from being cramped for 4 hours. He was going to need a long, hot shower when he got to his hotel. As passengers started filing off, Patricia appeared again. James, would you mind waiting just a moment? Rachel would like to speak with you by the gate. Rachel? The woman who took your seat. Oh, right. Yeah, of course. James waited while the plane emptied out. Frank and Helen both hugged him goodbye, making him promise to look them up if he was ever in Los Angeles again. Little Lily waved enthusiastically and her mother mouthed, "Thank you," one more time. When most of the passengers had deplaned, Patricia led James to the front of the plane. Rachel was waiting there in a wheelchair, her ankles too swollen to walk comfortably. When she saw James, fresh tears started streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping her eyes. "I keep crying. Pregnancy hormones are no joke." James smiled. "It's okay. How are you feeling?" "So much better, thanks to you. I don't know if I can explain what these past 4 hours meant to me." She took a shaky breath. "I'm flying here because my father had a heart attack. I've been terrified for 2 days. And then I get on this plane, 8 months pregnant, exhausted, scared, and I'm crammed into the smallest seat possible. I was already breaking down inside. I'm so sorry about your father. Is he going to be okay?" "The doctors say he's stable now. But James, when you gave me this seat, you gave me more than just comfort. You gave me a moment of peace, a moment where I could breathe and remember that good people exist, that kindness still exists." Anyone would have done the same thing. Rachel shook her head firmly. No, they really wouldn't have. I've learned that lesson over and over again in my life. Patricia helped Rachel stand from the wheelchair. They walked slowly toward the gate where a few airline employees were waiting with Rachel's luggage. James grabbed his backpack, ready to say goodbye and head to baggage claim. "James, wait," Rachel said. "I need to tell you something. And I need you to hear me out completely before you say anything, okay?" He nodded, confused. "My full name is Rachel Chen. My father is Robert Chen." The name sounded vaguely familiar to James, but he couldn't place it. Rachel saw his confusion. "He's a real estate developer. A pretty successful one. My family has money. A lot of money." James's stomach dropped. Suddenly, he understood why she was telling him this. "Look, if you're offering me money or something, I can't accept that. I didn't do this for a reward. I know you didn't. That's exactly my point. That's what makes you so rare." Rachel reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "This isn't about the seat." "Well, it is, but it's bigger than that. Can we sit down for a minute, please?" They found seats by the gate. Rachel's driver and security team kept a respectful distance, though James was just now noticing they were there at all. "My family has a foundation," Rachel began. "We fund educational programs, scholarships, community projects. And for the past year, we've been trying to launch a new program that teaches coding and technology skills to kids from low-income neighborhoods, kids who wouldn't normally get access to that kind of education." James leaned forward, interested despite himself. "That sounds amazing. It is. Or it will be, once we find the right person to run it." We need someone with a tech background who genuinely understands these communities, because they've lived that experience. Someone who cares more about making a difference than making money. Someone with character we can trust. She paused. Someone like you. James stared at her. I don't understand. I'm offering you a job, James, director of our STEM education initiative. You'd build the program from the ground up, hire your team, work directly with schools and community centers. The salary is $180,000 a year, full benefits, and it's based in Atlanta where you already live. The number hit James like a physical force. $180,000. That was more than triple what he made now. That was the kind of money that would let his wife quit her second job. The kind of money that meant they could buy a house instead of renting. The kind of money that meant his daughter could go to any college she wanted without drowning in loans. I can't, James said automatically. That's too much. You don't even know me. I know enough. I had my team do some research, nothing invasive, just public information. I know you've been applying to nonprofit tech companies for a year. I know you volunteer teaching basic computer skills at the library on weekends. I know you grew up in the exact kind of neighborhood this program is designed to help. Rachel leaned closer. And I know that when you saw a stranger in need, you gave up something you'd worked hard for without thinking twice. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. James shook his head, overwhelmed. This is crazy. People don't just offer strangers six-figure jobs. I do, when I find the right person. Rachel opened the envelope and pulled out a business card and a folder. This has all the information about the position, the foundation, everything. Take it home. Talk to your wife. Think about it. If you're interested, call David Kim. He's our family lawyer and he'll set up a proper interview, run a background check, all the normal stuff. I'm not asking you to decide right now. But why? There have to be hundreds of qualified people. Qualified isn't the same as right. I've met plenty of qualified people who didn't give a damn about the kids they were supposed to help. They saw it as a stepping stone or a resume builder. Rachel placed her hand over her heart. You gave me back something I'd almost lost. Hope. Faith in people. The belief that kindness isn't dead. The least I can do is give you an opportunity to do what you're clearly meant to do. James looked at the folder in his hands. It felt heavy, like it contained more than just papers. It contained a different future. A better one. I need you to understand something, he said quietly. I didn't give you that seat because I'm some kind of saint. I did it because my wife struggled through a pregnancy, and I remembered how hard it was for her. I did it because my mom taught me to help people when I can. That's it. That's everything, Rachel said. Don't you see? You're not trying to be a hero. You're just trying to be decent. And decent people who actually live their values instead of just talking about them, those are the people who change the world. Patricia had been standing nearby, pretending not to listen but clearly hearing everything. She was crying now too, not even bothering to hide it. Rachel's phone buzzed. That's my brother. He's here to pick me up. She stood carefully, wincing a little. James Wilson, think about my offer. Talk to your wife. And even if you say no, even if you throw that folder in the trash, I want you to know that what you did today mattered. It mattered to me, to my baby, to everyone on that plane who witnessed it. You made us all want to be better people. James stood too, still clutching the folder. I hope your father makes a full recovery. Thank you. And James? My family foundation, we throw an annual gala in Atlanta every spring. If you take this job, you'd be expected to attend. It's all very fancy, tuxedos and evening gowns, the whole thing. But I promise there's good food. James laughed despite himself. I've never even worn a tuxedo. Then it'll be a first. Just like flying first class was supposed to be. She smiled. Except you'll actually get to enjoy this one. They said goodbye, and James watched her meet her brother and security team, watched them fuss over her and help her into a waiting car. Then he looked down at the folder again. His phone rang. His wife, "Hey baby, did you land?" she asked. "Yeah, I landed. And honey, you're not going to believe what just happened." He walked toward baggage claim, talking a mile a minute, telling her everything. About giving up the seat. About Rachel. About the job offer. About the money that could change their lives. Are you going to take it? His wife asked. I don't know. Is it weird that it feels too good to be true? Maybe it's not too good to be true. Maybe it's just good. Maybe that's what happens when you put good into the world. Sometimes it comes back to you. James collected his luggage and headed for the exit. Outside, the Los Angeles sun was bright and warm. He thought about his mother. who'd be shocked when he showed up at her door tomorrow. He thought about his daughter, who might actually get to grow up in a house with a backyard. He thought about kids in neighborhoods like the one he grew up in, kids who'd get a chance they wouldn't have had otherwise. And he thought about a simple choice he'd made on an airplane, a choice that cost him comfort but gave him something more valuable, a reminder that kindness wasn't weakness, that helping others didn't make you a sucker, that good people didn't finish last after all. Sometimes they finished exactly where they were meant to be. 3 months later, James accepted the position. 6 months after that, the STEM program launched in 5 cities, helping over 200 kids in its first year. And every time someone asked James how he got the job, he'd smile and tell them about a pregnant woman on a plane and a first-class seat he'd never actually sat in. "Best investment I ever made," he'd say, even though I didn't know I was investing in anything at the time. Because that's the thing about kindness. You never know when you're planting a seed. You just plant it anyway and trust that something good will grow.